Hello everyone, I'm doing another kind of slowed down video today by request. I'm going to be doing a video on some Warframe combat basics, just to kind of simplify the combat and dumb it down. No, I'm not going to tell you left trigger is aim and right trigger is shoot. We all know how to play a shooting video game. That's not what I'm talking about. So I'm going to tell you just kind of how damage works in the game to the best that I can. And then maybe just give you guys some tips. So starting off, obviously you understand that when you upgrade a weapon, at the bottom left of your loadout screen, when you are in the arsenal on your ship, you'll see numbers. It'll say slash, puncture, or impact, or heat, etc., and it'll have a number next to it. That's pretty simple. That is how much damage you deal. And each enemy has a set amount of health. When you look at enemies, you'll notice it'll say their name, and then it'll show a health bar, and it'll also show a number. This, for example, says Lancer, which is the type of enemy, and then 12, indicating that he is level 12. Levels might confuse some new players in Warframe, because in Warframe you can only achieve level 30 on any of your gear, be it weapons, Warframes, whatever. You can only get them to level 30. This isn't so much to say that you're on par with level 30 enemies. That's kind of an independent thing. Don't view that as your strength with the enemies. Don't think, oh, well, these enemies are, you know, level 30, that's as strong as I can go. That's not what that means. 30 is more of just a player limitation and how leveling your equipment works. Enemies scale higher than that because, as you'll later find, you can deal much more damage than level 30 enemies can, and you'll eventually be able to wipe them out like they are nothing. So let's start with some basic tips. If you are holding your gun and you use the melee button, you can still use your melee, but you'll only use about 2 to 3 attacks, usually 1 or 2, over and over again. This can either be faster or slower depending on what your weapon combo is. So by meleeing while holding a gun, you'll only do this same attack over and over again. If you want to actually use your melee combos, meaning a full set of melee attacks, you will need to actually hold the swap weapon button. For you it might be something else, for me it's the Y button, to actually pull out your melee, and you'll notice that I can do much more attacks now. Much larger variety, that is to say. Throughout playing Warframe, you'll gain mods called stance mods. You'll know stance mods because they will have their own category, and you'll notice when you look at your melee weapons in the arsenal, they have a mod slot at the very top that says this mod slot is reserved for stance mods. If you try to put a mod in there, it'll tell you that. Stance mods increase your mod capacity on a weapon and also change how it attacks. This is really fun in the sense of, you know, sometimes you'll get a weapon and you use it and you're like, this looks, you know, really boring, or I don't like how my character swings it. I wouldn't swing a sword like that. That doesn't seem fun. Well, you can get a stance mod and it might change how your weapon attacks. On top of that, it'll also give you melee combos. So at any moment, you can pause the game and go to melee combos during a mission. You can also view this in your arsenal by looking at the stance mod, but you'll notice that it gives me a list of moves to perform. So Cardinal Breeze is just pressing my melee button over and over again, which is this attack here. These guys are giving me some trouble. I'm going to initiate some quick crowd control real quick. There we go. That's just this basic combo right here. Nothing too complicated, pretty simple. But you'll notice that if I go back to my melee combos, I can hit the melee button once, pause for a moment, and then start hitting it again. Which causes me to do this combo instead, where I do kind of a sideways twirl. And then my favorite ones, a lot of weapons have these, all you have to do is hold the right trigger, and you will perform another melee combo. Oh, that wasn't very nice. I'm gonna stop being nice for a second in this video. Die, you fools! Alright. So if you hold the right trigger, this is another melee combo. This is not how you will use melee combos with every weapon. Depending on the stance mod that you equip, you will have to press different buttons to make different melee combos happen. For me, this weapon just happens to be fairly easy. Doing the different melee combos is not difficult to do at all. Also notice that if you hold the right trigger, for me, the block button, you see my character blocking some bullets there. That is because you can actually deflect some of the damage coming at you while you're holding a melee weapon. As long as you're facing the enemy, you can deflect some of the damage. This does not deflect the damage back at the enemy. It only negates some of the damage that you take. It's not going to, you know, you're not a Jedi, you're not deflecting bullets back at them, you're just blocking some of the damage. Now, there is a mod you can get, I'm not going to go into it, but it will allow you to deflect some of the damage back at your enemies, but we'll save that for another time. Now, the way that this is helpful is it's really nice if you need to close a gap. You might as well just hold the right trigger while you got your melee out and run around and slap people, especially if, you know, your melee weapon is strong enough to kill the enemy, no problems, but you're also taking a pretty hard punch. You're going to want to block. Don't just run around all trigger happy like this. You know, it doesn't hurt you to block. It'll slow you down a little, but you'll take far less damage if you're not just a pro ninja bouncing off the walls everywhere. Blocking is also very nice because before an update, I think a year and a half ago, Warframe used to have a stamina bar. You could only run for a certain amount of time, and you could only block as long as you had stamina. The way this was nice was, it deflected all the damage you took. So you, essentially, if you blocked the bullets, you didn't take any damage. Now, you take some of the damage because we have unlimited stamina. There's no stamina bar anymore. You can run as much as you want. So naturally, we can't block all the damage. That would just make you practically invincible to enemies with guns. Another melee tip for me, this one may seem obvious. I don't use guns too much against the infested. I don't find it very helpful. If you are going to use a gun against the infested, use a crowd control gun like the Ignis, which is a flamethrower, or maybe another explosive weapon, or a weapon with punch through that's got some nice sweeping arcs to it, so you can hit several enemies at once. Aside from that, you're probably just going to want to stick with melee. Now, to explain damage, basically, there's 3 types of base damage in the game. Aside from elemental damage, there's puncture damage, which is like stabbing, slash damage, which is like cutting, and impact damage, which is like blunt trauma force. I prefer slash weapons, they are my favorite. Slash weapons are best against infested. Puncture weapons are best against Grineer, which are these guys I'm fighting right now, the big bulky shouldered men. And then impact damage is best against the Corpus, the annoying jumpsuit looking guys with energy shields. This is not to say that a puncture weapon can't do good against the infection, or a slash damage can't do good against the Grineer. I'm using a slash damage as we speak against the Grineer, and it does just fine. It's just going to give you a better edge in those areas. Slash damage is also my favorite because there's a chance that when you hit someone, you'll deal a slash proc, and essentially what this will do is it'll cause the enemy to bleed and slowly take damage. I think it's just really fun and a cool effect. So let's talk about status chances. How do you make that happen? How do you get the enemy to bleed? Well, every weapon has a status chance when you look at it in your arsenal when you're upgrading it. And essentially, a status chance is exactly what it sounds like. The percentage chance that when you hit someone, it's going to deal a status effect that your weapon can deal. How do you know that your weapon deals certain status effects? Well, obviously, if I don't put an electricity damage mod on my claw weapons, they're not going to have a chance to electrocute anyone. That wouldn't make any sense. A good status chance is going to increase your weapon's chance of dealing whatever damage is already on it, but it'll deal an elemental effect, like a special effect on an enemy. So to put this in terms, if you put a mod on your weapon that adds electricity damage, let's say it adds 100 electricity damage, your weapon will always deal 100 more damage. You don't have to worry about status chances. Your weapon's always going to be stronger. Don't worry about that. But if you have a good status chance of, say, 50%, then half of your melee attacks are going to electrocute the enemy and cause them to sort of have a seizure in place. For example, if you did the same thing with a fire damage mod, your weapon will always deal increased damage because of that mod. But there's a chance that you'll set the enemy on fire. It's just a nice extra perk, and can be really helpful. I think when you guys upgrade weapons, you should really play off of what their best base stats are. For example, if I have a weapon that does a ton of slash damage and like 2 puncture damage, don't put puncture mods on it. You know, don't upgrade things that the weapon isn't already good at. With the exception of, I would say, elemental damage, because there aren't a lot of good elemental damage weapons in the game, in my opinion. There's a few like really good ones that I guess are good for, you know, later on. But putting elemental damage mods on your weapons is fun. Don't worry about that. If it's a puncture, slash, impact, whatever, elemental damage mods are okay. If you guys want to play around with those, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You guys can do that, and your weapon's going to deal more damage, and that's not a bad thing. My personal preference is weapons that have good critical chance. You're going to want to find mods, and I'll be honest with you, the best way to find out what mods you want, don't be afraid to use Google. Warframe is not a game that explains things well. I know I'm here to explain to you how sort of combat and upgrading your weapons and how to kick ass works, but I can't, you know, tell you every mod that's in this game. I would be here all day. There's hundreds, if not thousands of mods. So look up the mods you want. If you don't know what they're called, just Google what mod increases the critical chance on my melee weapons. Warframe will tell you, the internet will tell you. But I love critical chance weapons. The reason I love critical weapons is because essentially the same with status chance. Critical chance means there is a chance that your weapon will deal critical damage. If you look at your weapon's stats in the arsenal, you will see critical chance and critical multiplier. The critical multiplier will say ×2, ×3 or 4, etc. And the critical the critical chance number is the percentage chance it has of dealing critical damage. So let's say you have 20% critical chance and your critical multiplier is ×4. There is a 20% chance that my weapon is going to do quadruple damage. It's very cool. If you have mods that upgrade that, you can make it to where you almost always get a critical chance. And your weapon's damage is just going to skyrocket. So those are usually my favorite. Look out for weapons with good critical multipliers and high critical chance. I want to take more time to actually show you guys some mods and explain how they function on your guns, just so you guys can get some better details and visual representations of how they actually work. So if I go to my claws here, my Vanka Prime, find an empty loadout. Here up top is the stance slot I was telling you about. Once you are down here in your weapon mods, you can hit RB and you'll notice the tab now says stance above these, and it'll show you all the stance mods you have. So that makes it real easy. They're easy to find. And here's what I want to show you guys. If you put a North Wind mod on here, it does plus 90% cold damage. You'll notice my claws do 49.5 cold damage. My status chance on this weapon is 15%, so there's a 15% chance that I am also going to kind of freeze them and slow them. This doesn't mean a 15% chance to deal 49 damage. That's not what that means. So don't confuse yourselves. Your weapon will always deal more damage, but there's only a 15% chance that you will visually see this status actually proc on an enemy. What's nice about elemental mods is when you put a base damage mod on your weapon, such as Pressure Point.
Operator, did you hear that? It said...
Pressure Point is the base melee damage multiplier mod. Every weapon category has a base damage multiplier mod that increases all the damage on the weapon, which is very nice to have. So if you ask me, Pressure Point is going to be for your melee. You should always have that equipped, would be my tip to you. No matter what kind of damage that you're going for. So if you look to the left as well, you'll notice that my weapon does 7 impact, 29 puncture, and 108 slash, the red number there, because this isn't as good of a build as what I used to have on it. So obviously, I've got this mod here, Buzzkill, adds 120% slash damage. That's obviously a lot better than 120% impact, because the reason mods are percentage based is because it's 120% of what the weapon had on it when you initially got it. So you put that on there and it's going to take my slash damage up to 239. So for example, if I put a heavy trauma mod on this weapon to increase my impact damage, which is only 7, it's plus 90% impact damage. That's pretty good. That's a strong mod, right? But it's 90% of what you already have. So 90% of 7 increased is only going to give me 13 impact. If you have a low stat on your weapon, don't try to bring it up. I think it's going to be a waste of mod slots. If you have mods that'll enable the weapon to be better at what it's already good at, please do that. You'll want to do that just about every time, in my opinion. Now, as far as how elemental mods work, you can get some cool effects with elemental mods, in the sense that if you mix them together, you can get new elements. So if I put a toxic damage mod up there, you'll notice I now do 33 toxin damage. If I combine that with a fire damage mod, you'll see it says gas damage, and it shows a picture of a flame plus a poison skull. That's letting me know that those two elements have combined to create a new element. You can only combine 2 elements at a time, and they go in order of top left across the screen like that to bottom right. So it's kind of like reading a book, from top left to bottom right. That is the order in which it'll stack the elemental mods. For example, I will now put an electricity mod on here, and you'll notice these two are still mixed together, and it just added 33 electricity damage. It's not mixing those with these. It doesn't matter where I put it, because it is reading on the list after those 2 mods. So those mods are always going to be grouped together first. So let's say I add another element of damage. I'll add cold damage this time. So you'll see it now combines electricity and cold damage to make magnetic damage. So now these 2 mods are grouped together to make a new element, and these 2 mods are grouped together to make a new element. This can be kind of frustrating, because if you have a weapon, such as a flamethrower, that already deals heat damage, and you throw a virulent scourge up there, it's automatically going to combine heat damage with toxin damage to give you a new element of damage. Well, maybe you still want it to deal heat damage. A way you can solve this is by putting another element on your weapon to combine it with, so that you still get to keep the element the weapon originally started with. It will always combine the mods instead of combining what's on your weapon first. I think one of the biggest problems with a lot of Warframes is that they are unable to heal themselves, and thus you rely largely on being revived by your teammates. I don't like doing that. So I've got this mod here that I really want to show you guys. It is called rejuvenation, and I don't have it equipped. Here it is. It is an aura mod, meaning you can place it in the top slot of any of your warframes. It won't cost you a thing, it'll actually increase your mod capacity, and it'll heal you and everyone on your squad for a rate of 3. It's about 3 health per second, which isn't too bad. That's going to ensure that no matter who you're playing as or whatever situation you get into, you're always going to be able to heal yourself. So guys, I just wanted to explain some combat tips and how damage works. Before I get off, I'll go ahead and show you guys how I've upgraded some of my weapons so that you can see maybe what you want to work towards. So if you look at my WARFRAME and how I've actually built them, you'll notice I have primed pressure point, obviously. I have buzzkill and jagged edge because they both add slash damage, which my claws are already good at. I have primed fury for increased attack speed because I like very fast weapons. And the WARFRAME already had a pretty nice critical chance, so I went ahead and actually I took the critical chance mods off because it was so good. I decided I wasn't going to need increased critical chance. I did Organ Shatter for increased critical damage, and these two mods basically work in conjunction with each other to also help me get more critical damage. So you'll notice my critical multiplier is 4.8. So there is a 1 in 4 chance that I will essentially almost deal 5 times the amount of damage that my claws normally deal. And to show you one of my favorite guns that I've been working on recently, trying to level up to high level, you'll notice I've got Serration, which is the base damage rifle mod on there. I've got some elemental mods that also increase my status chance, and I also have built it for critical damage and critical chance. So I wanted to try and build this to be a weapon that does both. It does critical damage and status damage very well. There's not a lot this thing can't kill, and it turned out pretty well. This was one of my first times trying it. So anyways, you guys, don't be afraid to try new things and find your own path is what I'm trying to tell you. Warframe for me, I didn't have anyone to help me. I didn't have anyone to teach me. I had to teach myself. I had to look a lot of things up, and I had to just kind of try them out and see what works best. So don't be afraid to try new things. I hope this video was helpful. If you guys have any other questions, please leave a comment down below. Again, I tried to keep things very basic. If there's anything else you'd like to know, feel free to ask a question, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.